6:49. Let's go back to the politics we were talking about a bit earlier and why Labour has focused more on voters who might go to the right to reform than those to the left, and ask, does that open up a gap? In New York, Democrats have chosen a 33-year-old socialist, Zohran Mamdani, as their candidate for the city mayor, and that is, to say the least, unusual in American politics. Perhaps it's a reaction to the second Trump presidency. Mamdani is a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. Here, of course, there was Jeremy Corbyn for a while, but there hasn't really been a left-wing socialist leader with a national profile since him. Could that person turn out to be my next guest, Zach Polanski, running to be a leader of the Green Party? Zach, it's very good to have you on the show, and we'll know in early September, I think, whether you've made it or not.
That's right. Thanks so much for having me on.
So your reflections on what's going on in New York. It is unusual to hear somebody openly calling themselves a socialist, not only being prominent in American politics, but actually winning.
I think it's been a phenomenal success, and it's really spoken to this moment. I think the key to it is he's been so clear about this is reducing the cost of living, both in America and right here in the UK. People are really suffering. We've seen decades where poor people have got poorer and rich people have got richer, and inequality really lies at the heart of so many of our problems. So yes, he's using the word socialism, and yes, we're talking about left-wing politics, but actually I think this is a politics that can genuinely speak to the majority of the country, because it's about fairness, it's about equality, and it's about reducing this inequality so we can all have better lives.
The big fight going on in the House of Commons is really fundamentally because there isn't enough public money to go around, and they're looking at the welfare bill. Your answer would presumably be higher taxation.
Yes, a wealth tax. So for a long time, I've been advocating for a 2% tax on assets of £10 million or more. There are other measures too, things like bringing capital gains tax in line with income tax. Right now, we're taxing earned income much more than we're taxing unearned wealth. I think to most people, that seems unfair and unsustainable. There's also things too around the Bank of England, where we are giving interest rates to loans that have been given out, so-called quantitative tightening. That could also raise billions of pounds. So there's lots of ways to fund public services. And also there are spending multipliers. So all the money that we spend on public services, we get back into our economy by a boosted economy.
I mean, the problem with talking about raising taxes as a central thing is an awful lot of people think one day that's going to be me, and it becomes unpopular. Do you think you can actually persuade middle-income, normal voters, as it were, that it's not them that are going to be hit?
I think it's about really getting the message across that this is for super rich. We're talking about people who are earning money while everyone else is sleeping. So it's not about people using their hands or their brain.
Are there enough of them?
Yes, I think so. And there was a report recently by Henley and Partners that said that a lot of millionaires and billionaires were going to flee the country. That's now largely been discredited. So I think we've overcome the first hurdle, which people said, will they not just leave? And that was a kind of trickle-down economics. I think we're into the second hurdle now, which is making sure that people who run small businesses or medium businesses know they're absolutely part of the solution here. This is really about the 99% versus the 1%, a super elite that for far too long have been destroying our environment, destroying our democracy, and destroying our communities. I think this is a unifying message that can speak to everyone, and that's why I want to be Green Party leader.
Not surprisingly, Keir Starmer and his team are focusing very heavily on voters who might defect from Labour to Reform. Do you think that they are making a big mistake? And in other words, that there are lots more voters to their left who they are alienating? And how big is that Labour vote that you think you can squeeze?
I think it's a catastrophic mistake, and I see my number one mission to make the Labour government more worried about losing votes and seats to the Green Party than to Reform. Now, polling shows that over half of the people who voted Labour just last year are now thinking of voting for the Green Party or the Liberal Democrats. I think when we look at the Liberal Democrats, they've made big successes in the last few years, but actually I couldn't tell you the coherent narrative that brings them together. In the Green Party, I think we have a very strong message, which is about reducing bills, reducing rents, and funding our public services by reducing inequality.
What would you say to people who say, I'm very involved in green politics, I'm an environmentalist, but I'm not on the left?
I think there's space for lots of people, and I think for anyone who wants to protect the environment or conserve the environment, and that's obviously soft conservatives, people who might have voted Conservative in the past, I think they're increasingly unhappy with what British democracy looks like, both from the Boris Johnson years and the Liz Truss years, and are actually looking for something different. I think this is why, ultimately, those of us who define ourselves on the left have to speak to a much broader group of people to say left-wing politics hasn't necessarily been what you've been told it's been for years, but actually it's just about reducing inequality and making sure everyone's got a fair shot.
And last question, I'd really like your reflection on why it is that the Green Party in this country has done so much less well than Green parties across Europe. And you look at the Germans and you look at Scandinavian countries, the Greens are really, really powerful in those political economies, much less so here. Why?
I think it's about two things. So one, I think a first past the post system has undoubtedly held us back. In the last election, we got nearly 2 million votes, but only got 4 MPs. I think we've demonstrated now, even under first past the post, we've worked out that we can and do win. We need to do much more of that. But secondly, I think we've not been bold enough. So when we go on the media being very proud of the message that we want to send, and also when people criticise us or find what they think are gaps in the plans, really being out there, standing in our truth, being authentic, and really making sure that millions of people in this country hear about the Green Party.
All right, Zach, you've talked about being bold and you do want to be the leader. So let me ask you straightforwardly what you think about the Glastonbury row. Do you think it's right to prosecute or go after Kneecap and Bob Villan, the other group?
I just got back from Glastonbury, so I was there.
You were there. Were you waving a flag?
I was waving lots of flags, but actually I think Glastonbury is not the story here. I think genocide is the story. And we have a British government that are not just complicit, but active participants through the selling of arms, sharing of intelligence, and the fact that they will not condemn Israel's attack on Iran and indeed the US's attack on Iran. I want Keir Starmer to step up, and I think that has to be the story here.
Well, you heard what Bob Villan said on stage about kill the IDF. Do you support that? Do you think we should be objecting to that?
I wouldn't ever support anyone saying kill something or someone, but I also still think condemnation seems a little bit hypocritical when we're not condemning or not enough people are condemning the British government. I think a British government that have access to arms and are literally involved with the killing of people in terms of what those arms are being used for is a lot more serious than an artist standing on stage shouting something that I think at best you could find objectionable, but it's in no way comparable.
And so the police should basically butt out of this too?
I think for most people, they recognise that the police have a lot better things to do. We know that crime in this country, lots of communities feel over-policed and under-protected, and I think we should really be sorting that out rather than policing freedom of expression.
All right, Zach Polanski, thanks very much indeed for coming.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's hot.